focuses on in this particular story are, I think, the myths of Zionism. So Israel being, a land, what's it? A land for a people, a land without people for a people without land. So I think that was one of the myths he was dealing with. And then I think the other thing he was dealing with was interrogating big Zionist institutions, and in particular the JNF, the Jewish National Fund, which had been acquiring land for Jewish settlement from 1910, and certainly in more recent times had embarked on a project of planting forests. And I don't know if when you were growing up as a kid, but you probably had one of those blue money boxes and you were meant to put your small change into the money box. I went to King David. We got something even more fun to do for the JNF. We got a card every week with indentations, which exactly fitted a 5-cent piece. And when your card was full up of 5-cent pieces, you took your card to school, and they took all the 5-cent pieces for the JNF, and then you got your card back to fill again with 5-cent pieces. So huge fundraising in the diaspora for the JNF. And he begins to interrogate that process. I think one of the interesting things is that when the JNF first started planting trees, it planted olive trees and fruit trees. Olive trees sort of appropriate for the environment, fruit trees obviously about production and food. But by the time Yehoshua starts writing this story, they are planting pine trees, and we can talk a little bit more about pine trees. But are there any volunteers to maybe read this very, very summarized version of the story? Someone can start. Yeah, start, Margaret.
Another winter lost in fog. As usual, he did nothing. Postponed examinations, left papers unwritten. He had completed all his courses long ago, attended all the lectures, and the string of signatures on his tattered student card testified that all had fulfilled their duty, silently disappeared, and left the rest of the task in his own limp hands. But words weary him, his own, let alone the words of others. He drifts from one rented room to another, rootless, jobless. But for an occasional job tutoring backward children, he would starve to death. Here he is approaching 30, and a bald spot crowns his wilting head. His defective eyesight blurs many things. His dreams at night are dull. They are uneventful. A yellow waste where a few stunted trees may spring up in a moment of grace, and a naked woman. Solitude is what he needs, for he is not without talent, nor does he lack brains. He needs to strengthen his willpower.
Okay, so maybe just let's stop for a minute. Do we know his name? No. So names are very important in the story. He is the main character of the story, and we don't know his name. And I suspect in some ways it's autobiographical. When Yehoshua was writing this, he was 27 years old, i.e. approaching 30, and he's a kind of dissolute, unsuccessful academic, isn't really making a big success of his life. Who would like to carry on? Okay.
Well, your lordship, we found the solution to your lordship's problem at last. And he will be quick to show an expectant eagerness, though cunning enough to leave himself ample means of retreat. What? The function of forest scout, a fire watcher. Yes, it's something new, a dream of a job, a plum. Utter profound solitude. There he will be able to scrape together his crumbled existence. Where did they get the idea? From the papers, yes, from a casual skimming of the daily papers. He is astonished, laughs inordinately, hysterical almost. What now? What's the idea? Forests. What forests? Since when do we have forests in this country? What do they mean?
Okay, more.
And so, when spring has set the windows ajar, he arrives early one morning at the afforestation department. A sunny office, a clerk, a typist, several typists. He enters quickly, armed with impressive recommendations, heralded by telephone calls. The man in charge of the forests, a worthy character edging his way to old age, is faintly amused. His position permits him as much. Grins to himself. Much ado about nothing, about such a marginal job. Hence he is curious about the calling, considers rising to receive him even. The plain patch of wilderness on top of the head of the candidate adds to his stature. The fellow inspires trust. Is surely meant for better things. Are you certain that this is what you want? The observation post is a grim place. Only really primitive people can bear such solitude. Then he is invited to sign an inoffensive little contract for 6 months. Spring, summer, summer is dangerous, and half the autumn.
Okay, someone else? Volunteer? Okay, yeah. Thank you. So, what do you think is being said about the forests? Or what is he saying about the forests? What is he thinking about the forests? Yeah, that they're alien. They're alien to the land in some way. There might be ancient groves, but there aren't really forests. But on the other hand, he's hearing a lot about it. So the forests in some ways are mythological. They're being problematized. Who wants to do next? Yeah?
What does he mean by small trees? He has obviously failed to use his eyes. Of course there are forests, real forests. Jungles, no, but forests, yes indeed. If he, the manager, had the time to spare, he could show him maps. But soon he will see for himself. There are forests in the hills of Judea, Galilee, Samaria, and elsewhere. A few days later he is back. This time he is received not by the manager, but by an underling. He's being sent to one of the larger forests. He won't be alone there, but with a neighbor, an Arab. They feel certain he has no prejudices. Goodbye. Ah yes. Departure is our son.
Okay. Any comments on this last few lines?
Who has no prejudices?
This is,
They don't actually say who.
but I think what they're suggesting is that he, the watcher, might have no prejudices. He might have no prejudice, but the assumption is that he very well could have prejudices. So what are they? They're saying something about the nature of the society, right? That Jews might have prejudices against Arabs. Okay. Another volunteer? Okay.
Who is the one in the command around here? We are those
Who wants to think a little bit about the pines? What are pines? Where do they come from? Europe. So they're very much an Ashkenazi tree, right? We know that he's a fifth generation Sephardi extraction Jerusalemite. Pines are really not indigenous. And what is he when he says only one species? What is he saying? Monocultures. Very, very bad for the environment because it prevents biodiversity. Okay, next, laboriously. Yeah, yes. Yeah, Jessica's point is correct. Yeah, Jessica, read. Do you want to take the next bit to read? All right, Erwin, you read.
Laboriously he hauls himself and his 2 suitcases down. An odd, charming stone house stands on a hill. Pines of all sizes surround it. He is at a high altitude here, though he cannot yet see everything from where he is. Silence, a silence of trees. The driver stretches his legs, looks around, breathes the air, then suddenly he nods goodbye and climbs back into his cab and switches the engine on. He who must stay behind is seized with regret, despair. What now? Just a minute? He doesn't understand. He rushes at the car, beats his fist against the door, whispers furiously at the surprised driver. But food? What about food? It appears that the Arab takes care of everything.
Okay.
Alone, he trudges uphill, a suitcase in each hand. Gradually, the world comes into view. The front door stands open and he enters a large room, the ground floor. Semi-darkness, dilapidated objects on the floor, food remnants, traces of a child. The despair mounts in him. He puts down the suitcase and climbs absent-mindedly to the second floor. The view strikes him with awe. 5 hills covered with a dense green growth, pines, a silvery blue horizon with a distant sea. He is instantly excited, forgetting about everything. He is even prepared to change his opinion of the afforestation department.
Okay. Anyone got any comments about what we've read so far? The Arab providing the food, the Arab takes care of everything. Okay, very important. We now have another important character in the story, the Arab, but he is also unnamed. So we've got an unnamed protagonist and an unnamed second protagonist, the Arab. And he's already there. And he does everything. In fact, the watcher would not be able to survive if it weren't for the Arab who's providing the food. Okay, next.
This feeling of the tree, that in spite of this mammoth thing that they've achieved, that there is actually a forest there, that there's this, the force of their will to impose this thing in a place where it's not natural. It has actually achieved, it's there.
Yeah, so it's been successful, the campaign to plant trees. Okay. Who wants to carry on? Volunteers? Go.
Suddenly he wakes. The red light is burning on his glasses. He's bewildered, scared, his senses heavy. The forest has caught fire, apparently, and he has missed it. He jumps up, his heart wildly beating, grabs the telephone, the binoculars, and then it occurs to him that it is the sun, only the sun setting beyond the trees. He is facing west. Now he knows. Slowly he drops back into the chair. His heart contracts with something like terror, like emptiness. He imagines himself deserted in this place, forgotten. His glasses mist over, and he takes them off and wipes them. When dusk falls, he hears steps. An Arab and a little girl are approaching the house. Swiftly he rises to his feet. They notice him, look up, and stop in their tracks, startled by the soft, scholarly-looking figure. He bows his head. They walk on, but their steps are hesitant now. He goes down to them. The Arab turns out to be old and neat. His tongue was cut out during the war, by one of them or one of us. Does it matter? Who dark room, its windows ablaze with the last light. The fire watcher shakes a heavy hand, bends to pat the child, who flinches, terrified. The ring of loneliness closes in on him. The Arab puts on lights. The fire watcher will sleep upstairs.
Okay. So what do you think is happening over here? So I think, first of all, he's living in a state of permanent anxiety. He's waiting for the fire. So that's either just a description of what he's doing, or it's a description of a broader political, geographic circumstance. You're living in a very, very vulnerable place where conflagration could come at any time. So I think that might be something that's suggested here. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we know that there's been a traumatic history. The Arab's tongue has been cut out, but we don't know. Were we guilty of the cruelty, or were they guilty of the cruelty? And it's about a society, right, that's been constructed as a very hard binary. Them and us, them and us. Should I read a bit? It seems a long time since he left town. He wraps himself in blankets, lies facing the forests. A cool breeze caresses him. What sort of sleep will come to one here? The Arab brings him a cup of coffee to help him stay awake. The fire watcher would like to talk to him about something, perhaps about the view, or about the poor lighting, perhaps. He has words left in him still from the city, but the Arab does not understand Hebrew. The fire watcher smiles warily in thanks. Something about his bald crown, the glint of his glances, seems to daunt the Arab. It's 9:30, the beginning of night. Cicadas strike up. He struggles against sleep engulfing him. His eyes close and his conscience tortures him. The binoculars dangle from their strap around his neck, and from time to time he picks them up, lifts them to his eyes, blinded with sleep, glass clicking against glass. He opens his eyes in a stare and finds himself in the forest among pines, hunting for flames, darkness. How long does it take for a forest to burn down? Perhaps he will look only every hour, every 2 hours. Even if the forest should start to burn, he would still manage to raise the alarm in time to save the rest. The murmur downstairs has died down. The Arab and his child are asleep, and he is up here, light-headed, tired after his journey between 3 walls and the void gaping to the sea. Any more volunteers? Max? For a week. Sorry, I think the photocopying.
Ostensibly, he is working all the time, but observing could hardly be called work, could it? The temperature rises day by day. He wonders whether it is still spring, whether perhaps summer has already crept upon the world. One can gather nothing from the forest, which shows no change except thorns fading to yellow among the trees at once. His hearing is growing acute. It has grown acute. The sound of trees whispers incessantly in his ears. His eyes shine with the sun's healing strength. His senses growing keener. He is becoming attached to the forest in a way. Even his dreams are growing richer in trees. The women sprout blooms.
Okay. So he's beginning forest is beginning to have meaning for him. It isn't something that, it's more than a job. It's penetrated his soul. It's now in his dreams. Okay, next, someone to read more?
His first step is the proper communication. He certainly observations, but hugging it forward as though afraid to leave them. Yet the trees attract him like magic. Little by little, he ventures amongst the hills, deeper and deeper. If he should smell burning, he will turn back. But this isn't a forest, only the hope and the promise of one. Here and there the sun appears through the foliage, and a traveller amongst the trees is dappled, with flickers of light. This isn't a rustling forest, but a very small one, like a graveyard. A forest of solitude. The pines stand erect, slim and serious, like a company of new recruits awaiting their command. The roaming flower watcher is pleased by the play of light and shadow. With every step is cut of dry pine needles from the foot. Softly, endlessly, the pines shed their needles. Pines arrayed in a garment, mingling life and death.
Okay, so now he's engaging with the forest. He's not just looking at it from far. He's actually walking through the forest. He's beginning to experience the forest, but the forest is an ambivalent thing. It has life and death. It has, and the trees are like soldiers. We'll come back to that. Hold that idea in your mind. The trees are like soldiers. Jessica, read some more.
He has been wandering in the woods for all of an hour now, and is still making new discoveries. The names of donors, for example. It had never occurred to him that this wouldn't be just some anonymous forest, but one with a name, and not just one name either. Many rocks bear copper plates, brilliantly brushed. He stoops, takes off his glasses, reads, Louis Schwartz of Chicago, the king of Burundi and his people. Flickers of light play over the letters. The names cling to him like the falling pine needles that slip into his pocket. How odd. The tired memory tries to refresh itself with these faceless names.
Okay, let's stop. So this is the first time in the story we've encountered some names. He's been nameless, the Arab is nameless, the child is nameless, but now for the first time we have Louis Schwartz of Chicago and we have the king of Burundi. Let's just unpack. First of all, it's a donor forest, right? These are J&F trees. Everyone's given their donation. They now get to get a plaque next to their tree. Let's unpack who is Louis Schwartz and who is the king of Burundi. Yeah, exactly. He's a diaspora Jew. Who's the king of Burundi? Yeah. No, it's 1963, this book. I think it's about independent countries, but I think for Abi Yehoshua, it's about as exotic as a reference as he can possibly find. It's like anyone, everyone, anywhere in the world is participating in funding the forests. I mean, I think it was chosen quite deliberately. So, okay. Who wants to carry on? Hikers start arriving in the forest.
Hikers start arriving in the forest. Lone hikers, some of them, but mostly they come in groups. He follows them through the binoculars. Various interesting ages. Like ants, they swarm over the forest, pour in among the trees, calling out to each other, laughing. Then they cast off their rucksacks all at once and burden themselves on as many clothes as possible and hang them up on branches, and promptly come over to the house. The group leaders ask him to give some account of the place, but there is no account to give. Everything is still artificial here. There is nothing here, not even some archaeology for amateurs. Nothing but a few donors' names inscribed on rocks. Would they be interested in the name?
Okay, so let's go back to that. What? A land without people for a people without land. So there's nothing. There's no. It's emptiness. He's emphasizing the emptiness. There's nothing here to be seen. Okay, someone.
And there's also a line, everything is still artificial here. It's not rooted in.
It's a man-made project. It's a project that's, yeah. There's no history, yeah. No history, no people. Who wants to carry on? A hiker's delegation. Yeah, okay. So, what are we seeing here? Yeah, so the village, there was a village, but I think what's also important is what has changed in the Arab? How has he changed in the course of this paragraph? What's happened?
Suddenly comes to life.
Yeah, he's suddenly come to life. He's not just someone who brings food. He's excited. But then when he wakes up the next morning, he thinks, I dreamed it. So there's this brief glimmer of a kind of a communication between the fire watcher and the Arab, but by the next morning, the futility of that spark that has disappeared. Let's carry on. Who wants to carry on? Okay. So we have another name now. We have Mr. Sackstein, this time from Baltimore. So again, sort of reinforcing the agency of the diaspora Jews in the forest. They are the people who are being recognized. But I think, again, the sort of thing that Jessica picked up on, the sort of how the trees become metaphors. The trees were soldiers. Now the trees are standing heavy with honor. In other words, the trees are deeply appreciative of the donations from the Jews in the diaspora, or that's what he's, I guess, cynically suggesting. Another volunteer, sometimes the fire watcher.
Observing from his height, will notice one of the party darting troubled looks about him, raising his eyes at the tree, as though searching for something. It takes many ceremonies before the fire watcher's wandering mind will grasp that this is none other than the old man in charge of the afforestation, who comes and repeats himself, dressed always in the same clothes at every ceremony. Well, young man, and how's the solitude? Solitude, you wonder? The old man presents him to the party. A scar. They smile. Trouble meets his hand with their fingertips. Move on. Trouble meets his hand with their fingertips. Move on. They do not have the complete faith in his cleanliness. The old man, on the other hand, looks at him affectionately. A thought crosses his mind, and he stays behind a moment. Well, so there are forests. He grins with good-hearted nature's irony. Yes, admits the scout honestly. Forest, yes, but what? But fires, no. Fires, the old man wondered, bending towards him. Yes, fire. I spend whole days here, sitting and wondering. Such a quiet summer. Well, why not? Actually, there hasn't been a fire here for several years now. To tell you the truth, I don't think there's ever been a fire at all in this property. Nature itself has harnessed to our great enterprise here.
What do you think the last line means? Nature here has been harnessed to our great enterprise. Yeah, God's on our side. It's a bit like what Jessica picked up. The trees are like soldiers. Everyone is, nature is, and God, and everyone is on the side of the Zionist project, right? Okay, before he goes, he would just like to know the watchman's opinion of the dumb Arab. The lorry driver has got the idea into his head that the fellow is laying in a stock of kerosene. The watchman is stirred. Kerosene? Dare say it's some fancy of that malicious driver. This Arab is a placid kind of fellow, isn't he? Wonderfully placid, agrees the fire watcher eagerly. Then he walks a few steps around the old man and whispers confidentially, "Isn't he a local?" A local? Because our forest is growing over, over a ruined village. A village? A small village. A small village? Ah, something is coming back to him anyway. Yes, there used to be some sort of farmstead here, but that is a thing of the past. Of the past, yes, certainly. What else? What's going on? So the manager of the forestation department, he is part of the big J&F project, right? The big Zionist project. And he remembers that he's now been reminded that there was a forest. But then what does he say? It's the past. The past is, he writes off that history. So he's rejecting the history of what came before the forest. Yes, but he's also explaining, and this notion of sort of living in this constant state of fear that you can't trust anybody. Okay, who wants to do next?
He goes to the center of the Arab to save his water. There's
Any comments? Anyone want to? Yeah, so I think more and more evidence of the village is beginning to emerge, but I think also the scout, the fire watcher, is becoming more and more preoccupied by the idea of this, more and more convinced and trying to find out more and more about the village that was once there. What is he looking for? Relics of thoughts that have flitted here, words that have completed their mission. But what will he find one fine day? Say, even the day that we have taken for a sample. As he's looking, small tins of kerosene. How wonderful! The zeal with which someone has filled tin after tin here and covered them up with the girl's old dress. He stoops over the treasure, the still liquid on whose face dead pine trees drift. His reflection floats back at him together with a faint smell. Okay, the plot is thickening. He has found a stockpile of kerosene. Erwin, do you want to read? He turns in his tracks.
He turns in his tracks. After a few paces, the Arab pops up in front of them. Together in silence, they return to the forest, their empire theirs alone. The fire watcher strides ahead, and the Arab tramples on his footsteps. A few clouds, a light breeze. Moonlight pours over the branches and makes them transparent. Leads the Arab over roads that are the same roads always. Barefoot he walks, the Arab, and so still. Round and round he is led, round about into his hideout amid chiseled stones and silence. The Arab steps falter, his footfalls lag, die, and come alive again. A deathly cold grips the fire watcher's heart, his hands freeze, he kneels on the rustling earth. Who will give him back all the empty hours? The forest is dark and empty, no one here. Not one campfire, just now, when he would like to dip his hands in fire, warm them a little. He heaps up some brown needles, takes a match, lights it, and the match goes out at once. He takes another and cups his hand around it, strikes, and this one too flares up and dies. The air is damp and traitorous. He rises. The Arab watches him, a gleam of lunatic hope in his eyes. Softly the fire watcher walks around the pile of stones to the sorry little hideout, picks up a tin of clear liquid and empties it over the pine needles, tosses in a burning match and leaps up with a surging flame, singed happily. At last he too is lit up a little. Stunned, the Arab goes down on his knees. The fire watcher spreads his palms over the flame, and the Arab does likewise. Their bodies press in on the fire, which has already reached its highest pitch. He might leave the flame now and go and bathe in the sea. Time wasting here among the trees will do his work for him. He muses, his mind distracted. The fire shows signs of languishing little by little. It dies at his feet. The Arab's face takes on a look of bitter disappointment. The bonfire fades. Last sparks are stamped out meticulously. Thus far it was only a lesson. The wandering mind of the fire watcher trembles between compromises. He rises wearily and leaves. The Arab slouches in his wake. Who is sitting on the chair behind the book-laden desk? The child. Her eyes are wide open, blinking in the dark. The Arab has put her there to replace the loving fire watcher. It's an idea.
Okay. Oh, so what do you think is happening? We sing fire for the first time in the forest. But who's making the fire? And why are they making a fire? They're making the fire together. That's really important, right? and they're making the fire to warm themselves. And in the mind of the fire watcher, it's a lesson. He uses the word, it's a lesson. He is suggesting the possibility of fire. He's excited by the possibility of a fire. But the fire goes out, and the forest is saved. But when the fire watcher goes back to his house, what did he see? He sees the little Arab girl sitting in his place. It can be read literally, but it can also be read in a deeply symbolic way. It's about a deeply doubtful Israeli citizen. He's worried about the legitimacy of the forest. He's obsessed by the idea of what might be revealed if the forest burns down. He is in some sort of an alliance with the Arab. They are working together to make the little fire. And when they go back, who is sitting at the desk? Who's in charge now? Who has taken the place of the scout? The little Arab girl, the next generation. Okay, so I think there are many, many stories to be read into this little paragraph. It can't happen yet. The fire has not been allowed to engulf the forest in flames. But there is a little fire, and both people are making that little fire together. I think so. I don't think the Arab he's not entirely innocent. He has agency, and I think that's important. So on the one hand, he's mute, he can't talk, but he is doing something, and we're beginning to understand his antagonism, right? His desire, because I think for him the forest is an affront. The forest is it was his village that got wiped out. So for him, the forest is a deeply troubling thing. It's something that he's been erased. His village has been erased. So he is giving serious thought to the erasure of what has come to replace his village. So I think he is stockpiling the kerosene. I think he has got ideas in his mind. But the first fire that is made in the forest is made as a collective effort. They are both making the fire together.
Time being cut out is a metaphor for the voiceless.
Yeah, the Arab has been rendered voiceless. We only ever hear him grunt. Yeah. Who wants to read the next bit? When they return to the twilight.
When they return at twilight, lit by a soft autumnal glow, the fire watcher will lead the Arab to the tree-engulfed house and will linger a moment. Then the Arab explains something with hurried, confused gestures, squirming his severed tongue, tossing his head. He wishes to say that this is his house, and that there used to be a village here as well, and that they have simply hidden it all, buried it in the big forest. The fire watcher looks on at this pantomime, and his heart fills with joy. What is it that rouses such passion in the Arab? Apparently his wives have been murdered here as well. A dark affair, no doubt. Gradually he moves away, pretending not to understand. Did there used to be a village here? He sees nothing but trees.
Okay?
The nights,
Yeah, carry on.
the nights are growing longer. Hot desert winds and raindrops mingle. Soft shimmers of lightning flash over the sea. The last day is discharged his duty faithfully. It isn't his fault that no fires are broken out.
Who wants to read the next section? It's the last day of his job as a fire watcher.
Then suddenly fire, all unforeseen interrupted the long rest returned. On trees burning, trees are prepared. The one line on trees going through its hour platform as many minutes forward. The left to the cedar. Yes, the man is dead. He's breathing at night. The loneliness of single dwelling weakness. He's beginning to lie there in the ground, why not eat the wood and the thirst for food, and the shoulder over to like fire. His eyes are closing. His drowsiness is greatest at this most wonderful of times. There rises into starts closer nearest interior when the odor and warmth of his feet. A short while passes and then a small spectre is comes. He starts holding up the house, hurriedly sitting in the forest on fire, in his four corners. Then takes a fire brand and rushes through the tree like a forest fire, sitting by it for rest. The thoroughness with which he goes about his task is amazing to Sarah. Goes down to look at the fire. He's asleep. Back to the observation spot. The forest is calm. He ought to run and race the alarm, call for help. But his movements are so tranquil, his limbs moving. Downstairs again. He adjusts the blankets over the child, pushes a light upward over her eyes, out of her eyes, goes back up, and at last the heart feels
Okay, so now the forest is alight. It has been set on fire by the Arab. And what is his reaction to that? Initial panic. He picks up the phone to do something. But then he slows down. His movements become languid. And he goes downstairs to cover the child. So what is happening? Okay. But what thought then is he running? Is he rushing? What does he do when he discovers that? Yeah, and he goes to cover the child. He's thinking about the future, and it's his humanity, right? So on the one hand, I think what's interesting about him is he's this ambiguous character. He wants to burn down the forest, partially because he's been waiting for the excitement of the fire. He's been upset all along that there'd be no fire. He also realizes it's completely destructive, but he's also concerned for the child. So I think his ambiguity, he has questions. He knows that the Arab his tongue has been burnt out. The house that he's now occupying was the house of the Arab. It emerges that the Arabs' wives were killed. So the horror is building up. So there is something about him which is identifying with, or he understands why the Arab is setting the forest on fire. But his first action is he lets the fire burn, his movements are languid, and then he goes to deal with the child. So I think his complexity as a character is interesting.
wonderful of moments.
It's a wonderful
Wonderful at this most wonderful of moments.
moment, yeah. Yes?
I have a question here. On page 5, that is the
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting sentence because it's almost like he's making a joke. He was employed, he was paid for 6 months to look for fire. It wasn't his fault that there wasn't a fire. He almost feels like there needed to be a fire, but it wasn't his fault. And now there is a fire. Now the big drama has emerged on the night of his going. So almost like, I don't know, if you think about the Israeli army spotters who were on the border in Gaza on the night of the 6th of October, they sat there for months and months waiting for something to happen. And then something happened. And it's almost like those months and months when nothing happened, they weren't gainfully employed. It was like a waste of time. So I think there's this, and I think it's a paradox of being in a state of constant expectation that something could go wrong. I think it's the deep uncertainty, the deep worry that people in Israel live with, that the fire will come. And yeah, you watch. Do you want the fire to come? Don't you want the fire to come? I think there's an ambiguity. Yeah.
And also this beautiful sentence, one tree is burning, a tree wrapped in prayer.
Yeah. So now, yeah, we've had the tree as a soldier. Now we have the tree in prayer. So the trees have, and then in some other paragraphs, the naked woman sprouts leaves. So the tree is fulfilling all of these remarkable roles. It's about a soldier, it's about a religious person, it's about growth and sex and birth and, yeah, so it couldn't be a, yeah. Okay. Who wants utter destruction? Suit. Who wants to take that on?
Utter destruction, soot, tangle of charred timber, its wounds still smouldering, and the residue of living branches unvisited by fire. Wherever he sets foot, 1,000 sparks fly. The commemorative clocks alone have survived. More than that, they have gained lustre after their baptism of fire. There they lie, golden in the sun, Louis Remington of Chicago, the king of the wind and his people. He turns his gaze to the fire-smoking hills, frowns. There, out of the smoke and haze, the ruined village appears, before his eyes, born anew in its basic outlines as an abstract drawing, as all things past and buried. But there is no story, is there? There just isn't anything to tell. All there is, suddenly a fire sprang up. I lifted the receiver, the line was dead. That's it. The child had to be saved. It had been arson, yes, arson. The smell of morning dew comes mingled with the smell of kerosene.
Yeah, I think let's finish the story because they're coming. I'm worried they're coming in.
Looking sergeants improvise a kind of emergency interrogation cell among the rocks, placing him on a stone and start cross-examining him. Inside the building, they are conducting a simultaneous interrogation of the Arab, in Arabic, eked out with gestures. Only the questions are audible. He starts contradicting himself. At 3 o'clock he breaks in their hands, is prepared to suggest the Arab as a possible clue. This, of course, is what they have been waiting for.
So, yeah, so I think the anticipation of the fire, his ambiguity, I think it suggests that he first tries not to blame the Arab for setting the fire, but then he caves in. Because we know he was also complicit in teaching the Arab. They did that initially, they did that together, and then the Arab did it by himself. So I think enormous numbers of complexities. But at the end of it all, he's alienated. He knows too much. He must now walk in the streets of his familiar town with the knowledge that he has of what has preceded him. Okay, thank you. Mel will know this is my edited version of Abi Yehoshua's story. It's 30 pages, not 6. So. Yeah, it's completely, I got it off the internet. So if you want the whole story, just put in Facing the Forest. So what I didn't say was when the book was published, 1963, when this essay was published, there was an incredibly antagonistic